You buried it, did you not? The voice cut through the silence of the library like a blade through silk. Nora's hands froze on the ancient text she had been cataloging, her breath catching in her throat. She did not need to turn around to know who stood behind her. The air itself had changed the moment Alpha King Damon Blackthorne entered the room, thick with power, and something else. Something that made her wolf whimper and press itself against the walls of her mind where it had hidden for years. I do not know what you are talking about, Your Majesty. Her voice came out steadier than she felt, but her fingers trembled as she closed the leather-bound book. 24 years of practice at being invisible, at being unremarkable, at being safe, and it was all crumbling in the span of a heartbeat. She could feel his eyes on her back, could sense him moving closer with the predatory grace that made lesser wolves bare their throats in submission. The amulet, he said, and the word sent ice racing down her spine. You buried it when you were a child. Your grandmother told you to hide it, to never speak of it, to forget it even existed. Nora turned slowly, finally meeting those silver eyes that seemed to see straight through every wall she had ever built. How could you possibly know that? The Alpha King stood less than 5 feet away, towering over her small frame, dressed in the formal black attire of visiting royalty. But it was not his physical presence that made her heart pound. It was the way he looked at her, as if she were a mystery he was determined to solve, as if she mattered in a way that terrified her more than any threat ever could. Because it has been calling to me since the moment I set foot in this territory, Damon said, his voice dropping to something almost intimate, whispering a name over and over. Your name, Nora Ashwood. And I want to know why a forgotten Omega has an artifact of such power that it can reach across miles to summon an Alpha King. The memory crashed over her like a wave. She was 8 years old again, standing in her grandmother's garden under a moon so full it seemed to swallow the sky. The amulet had been burning against her chest, hot enough to leave marks on her skin, and the voices. Oh, the voices had been screaming prophecies she could not understand. Her grandmother, eyes wide with fear and something that looked like awe, had grabbed her shoulders hard enough to bruise. You must lock it away, child. You are too young, too untrained. The power will consume you if you are not careful. Promise me you will hide it until you are ready. Promise me. And Nora had promised, had taken the silver amulet with its moonstone center, and placed it in the iron box her grandmother provided, had buried it deep beneath the rose bushes, had tried with everything in her to forget the way it sang to her blood. 16 years. 16 years of silence, of normalcy, of safety, until 3 days ago when the Alpha King arrived and the whispers started again, faint at first, then growing stronger each night, calling her back to the garden, calling her back to destiny she had never wanted. I am nobody, Nora said. But even as the words left her mouth, she knew he would not believe them. How could he when the lie tasted like ash on her tongue? You are the furthest thing from nobody that I have ever encountered. Damon moved closer still, and Nora found herself backed against the bookshelf, surrounded by the scent of old paper and his own intoxicating presence. Cedar and moonlight and raw power. What are you running from, little Omega? What frightens you so much that you would bury a piece of yourself in the ground and pretend it does not exist? You do not understand, Nora whispered, hating the way her voice shook, hating the vulnerability that exposure brought. The things I heard when I wore it, the visions, they were terrifying. I saw wars. I saw death. I saw the moon weeping blood across the sky. My grandmother said I was too young to bear such burdens, that the gift would break me if I tried to carry it before I was ready. Damon's expression shifted, something like recognition flickering in those impossible silver eyes. Oracle blood, he breathed. By the goddess, you carry oracle blood. That is why the amulet calls to you. That is why it calls to me. He reached out as if to touch her face, then stopped himself, his hand falling back to his side. Do you have any idea how rare that gift is? How precious? The last known oracle died over a century ago. The Pacts have been blind to the goddess's will for generations because that bloodline was thought to be extinct. Nora shook her head violently, pressing herself harder against the shelves behind her. No. No, you are wrong. I am just an Omega. My parents were nobody special. My grandmother was a healer. Nothing more. Whatever you think I am, whatever you think that amulet means, you are mistaken. But the Alpha... King was not listening anymore. His head had tilted slightly, as if hearing something she could not, and his eyes had gone distant. It is calling again, he murmured. Right now, this very moment. It knows I am close to you. It knows I can hear what others cannot. His gaze snapped back to her with an intensity that stole her breath. Take me to it, Nora. Take me to where you buried it all those years ago. I cannot. The words came out desperate, pleading. Your Majesty, I am begging you. Please just forget you ever heard those whispers. Forget my name. I have built a life here, a safe life, and I do not want any part of prophecies or powers or whatever destiny you think that amulet represents. For a long moment, Damon simply stared at her, and Nora saw something shift behind his eyes, some calculation being made that she could not follow. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, becoming softer, but no less commanding. What if I told you that 3 territories on the eastern border are on the brink of war? That without guidance from the goddess, without someone who can hear her voice and interpret her will, thousands of wolves will die in the coming months? He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over her. What if I told you that I have been searching for any sign of oracle blood for 5 years, ever since my father died and left me a kingdom tearing itself apart? Would you still choose safety over duty? Nora felt tears prick at her eyes, hating him for asking, hating herself for the way her heart responded to the pain in his voice. That is not fair, she said. You cannot put the weight of a war on my shoulders. I did not ask for this gift. I did not ask to be born with blood that hears things others cannot. I just want to be left alone. Fair. Damon's laugh was bitter. There is nothing fair about being king at 28 while watching your people prepare for a conflict that could destroy everything our ancestors built. There is nothing fair about carrying the responsibility for thousands of lives and having no way to know if the decisions you make are right or wrong. But we do not always get to choose our burdens, Nora. Sometimes they choose us. The sound of footsteps in the hallway outside made them both freeze. A moment later, a melodious voice called out, Damon? Darling, are you in here? We are supposed to meet with the council in 20 minutes. Nora watched as the Alpha King's jaw tightened, his entire body going rigid, with tension. Vivian, he said, not taking his eyes off Nora. I will be there momentarily. The door opened, and Lady Vivian Ashcroft swept into the library like she owned it. All elegant curves poured into a deep blue dress that probably cost more than Nora made in a year. Her blonde hair was arranged in an elaborate updo that seemed to defy gravity, and her ice blue eyes swept the room before landing on Nora with the kind of dismissive assessment that made her feel even smaller than usual. Oh, Vivian said, her tone suggesting she had just discovered something unpleasant on the bottom of her shoe. I did not realize you were conducting business with the help. How very democratic of you. Damon's voice turned to steel. Miss Ashwood is not help. She is the chief archivist of this territory, and an invaluable resource for understanding the history and traditions of the Silver Moon Pack. I suggest you show her the respect she deserves. Something dangerous flickered in Vivian's expression before she smoothed it away behind a practiced smile. Of course, my apologies. I meant no offense. She turned that smile on Nora, and it reminded her of a snake about to strike. You must forgive me, Miss Ashwood. Sometimes I forget that not everyone shares my dedication to propriety and station. I am sure you are very good at whatever it is you do with these dusty old books. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. Nora felt her face flush, but forced herself to meet Lady Vivian's gaze. I catalog and preserve the written history of our people so that future generations might learn from the past. I find it quite fulfilling work. She was proud of how steady her voice remained, even as she felt the weight of the other woman's disdain pressing down on her. How quaint, Vivian murmured, then turned her attention back to Damon, placing a possessive hand on his arm. We really must go, darling. The council does not like to be kept waiting, and we still need to discuss the final arrangements for the bonding ceremony next month. Mother sent 3 more fabric samples for my dress, and I absolutely must get your opinion on which silver will complement your formal robes best. Nora's heart stuttered in her chest. Bonding ceremony. Next month. Of course, the Alpha King was already promised to someone else. Of course, Lady Vivian, with her perfect beauty and perfect pedigree, was his chosen mate. What had she been thinking, letting herself respond to his attention even for a moment? She was nothing, nobody, exactly as she had always known. We will discuss the ceremony later, Damon said, and Nora did not miss the way he subtly removed his arm from Vivian's grasp. I have business to conclude here first. Vivian's smile turned brittle. What business could possibly be more important than our future together? Damon, people are starting to talk. You have been spending an unusual amount of time away from me since we arrived at this territory. It is not appropriate for a betrothed male to show such inattention to his intended mate. Then perhaps they should concern themselves less with gossip and more with the actual work of governance, Damon replied, his tone brooking no argument. Now, if you would excuse us, Miss Ashwood and I were in the middle of an important discussion about historical artifacts that may have bearing on current territorial disputes. For a moment, Vivian looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Damon's expression must have warned her off. Instead, she turned back to Nora with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Historical artifacts. How fascinating. I do hope you are being helpful to His Majesty, Miss Ashwood. It would be such a shame if he wasted his valuable time on a dead end. The threat in her words was subtle, but unmistakable. Nora nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She watched as Vivian glided toward the door, then paused in the doorway to deliver one final comment. Oh, and Miss Ashwood? That shade of gray is really quite unfortunate on you. You might consider adding a bit of color to your wardrobe. Even Omegas should try to look presentable. Then she was gone, leaving behind only the cloying scent of her perfume and the sharp sting of calculated cruelty. Nora stood frozen, feeling the weight of every insecurity she had ever carried pressing down on her chest. She looked down at her simple gray dress, the one she wore almost every day because it was practical and comfortable and did not draw attention. Suddenly it felt like a uniform of inadequacy, a visible symbol of everything she was not and could never be. Do not, Damon said softly, and when Nora looked up, she found him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Do not let her poison your mind with her venom. Vivian is an expert at finding the exact words that will make someone feel small, and she wields that skill like a weapon against anyone she perceives as a threat. I am hardly a threat to someone like her, Nora said, hating how much she meant it. She is beautiful, sophisticated, probably educated in all the things that matter to someone of your station, and she is your intended mate. I am just an Omega who catalogs books and tries to stay out of everyone's way. Damon crossed the distance between them in 2 long strides, and before Nora could react, he had cupped her, face in both his hands, forcing her to meet his gaze. You listen to me very carefully, Nora Ashwood. That woman out there may have been chosen by my council for political expediency, but she is not my mate. She will never be my mate. The bond between us is nothing but ink on paper and empty promises made by people who care more about alliances than actual connection. His thumbs traced gentle circles on her cheeks, and Nora felt electricity racing through her veins at every point of contact. But you? I have known you less than a week, and already I feel more drawn to you than I have felt toward anyone in my entire life. Already the thought of you in danger makes my wolf snarl with the need to protect. Already your name sounds like a prayer in my mind. Nora's breath came in short gasps, her heart pounding so hard she was certain he could hear it. "You do not know me," she whispered. "You do not know anything about me except that I have some artifact buried in a garden somewhere. How can you say these things when we are essentially strangers?" "Because every instinct I possess is screaming at me that you matter," Damon said, his voice rough with emotion she could not quite identify. "Because when I close my eyes, I see silver moonlight, and I hear your voice calling me home. Because my wolf, who has never once responded to Vivian, or any other female I have been near, is absolutely certain that you are ours to protect, ours to cherish, ours to claim." He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. "Tell me you do not feel it too. Tell me I am imagining this connection between us, and I will walk away. I will leave you to your books and your safe little life, and I will never bother you again. But if you feel even a fraction of what I feel, if your wolf recognizes mine the way mine recognizes yours, then I am begging you, Nora. Take me to that amulet. Let me help you face whatever you buried all those years ago." Nora closed her eyes, trying to block out the intensity of his gaze, trying to think clearly through the fog of sensation and emotion that his nearness created. But the moment her eyes closed, she saw it. A flash of vision, sudden and vivid. The amulet glowing with silver fire. Blood on snow. A crown made of moonlight and bone. And Damon, standing between her and something dark and terrible, his body a shield against a threat she could not fully see. Her eyes snapped open, and she gasped. "What is it?" Damon demanded, his hands moving to her shoulders to steady her. "What did you see?" "I do not know," Nora said, and realized with sinking dread that it was true. "I have not had a vision since I was 8 years old. I hoped, that burying the amulet had stopped them. But just now, when I closed my eyes, I saw something. I saw you protecting me from something dark. I saw blood, and moonlight, and danger I cannot name." Damon's expression turned fierce, possessive in a way that should have frightened her but instead made her feel safer than she had in years. "Then it has already begun," he said. "The moment I arrived in this territory, the moment the amulet recognized my presence and began calling to you again, the wheels were set in motion. You cannot run from this, Nora. Whatever destiny that artifact represents, whatever power sleeps in your blood, it is waking up whether you want it to or not. The only question is whether you face it alone, or with someone beside you who is strong enough to stand against. Whatever comes." Nora wanted to argue, wanted to insist that she could just rebury the box deeper, could just refuse to engage with any of this, and hope it all went away. But she had spent 16 years trying to outrun her own nature, and in the end, it had found her anyway. Perhaps her grandmother had been wrong. Perhaps hiding had never been the answer. Perhaps the only way out was through. "The house is 3 miles from here," she heard herself say, as if from a great distance. "The garden, where I buried it, is overgrown now. Nobody has lived there since my grandmother died 5 years ago. But I still have the key." Damon's face transformed with relief, and something that looked almost like triumph. "Then we go tonight," he said. "After the council meeting, after Vivian has retired to her chambers, and the rest of the territory has settled for the evening. Meet me at the North Gate at midnight, and I will take you there myself." "And if the visions return?" Nora asked, voicing the fear that had haunted her dreams for 16 years. "If I touch that amulet again, and the prophecies overwhelm me, if I see things I cannot bear to see, then I will be there to anchor you," Damon promised, and the certainty in his voice was almost enough to make her believe him. "I will keep you grounded in this world, no matter how far your gift tries to pull you into the next. You will not face this alone, Nora. Not anymore." He released her slowly, as if reluctant to break the contact between them, and stepped back. "I need to attend this council meeting before Vivian sends a search party. But I meant what I said. Midnight, North Gate. Do not make me come looking for you." It was not until after he left, until the library had fallen silent once more, except for the ticking of the old clock on the wall, that Nora allowed herself to sink into the nearest chair and let the magnitude of what she had just agreed to wash over her. She was going to dig up the amulet. She was going to face the power she had spent most of her life running from. And she was going to do it with a man who was engaged to someone else, a man who was king of an entire realm, a man who claimed to feel a connection to her that defied all logic and reason. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below. A soft knock on the door made her jump, her heart leaping into her throat. But when she called out permission to enter, it was not Damon or Vivian who appeared. It was Sienna, her closest friend and one of the few people in the pack who treated her like she mattered. "Hey," Sienna said, slipping into the library and closing the door behind her. "I just saw a lady stick up her ass leaving this wing looking like she wanted to murder someone. Please tell me she was not in here making your life miserable." Nora managed a weak smile. "She certainly tried. But I survived." Sienna crossed to where Nora sat and perched on the edge of the desk, her dark eyes searching Nora's face. "That is not all that happened, though, is it? You look like you have seen a ghost. Or like you made a decision that is probably going to change everything." It was moments like this that reminded Nora why she loved Sienna. Her friend had always been able to read her better than anyone else, had always known when something important was happening, even if Nora tried to hide it. "I cannot talk about it yet," Nora said quietly. "But yes, something has changed. Something big. And I am terrified, Sienna. I am absolutely terrified." Sienna reached out and took Nora's hand, squeezing it gently. "Is this about the Alpha King? Because, girl, I have eyes. The way that man looks at you is not how someone looks at a random archivist. That is how someone looks at their next obsession." Nora felt heat rise to her cheeks. "He is engaged to Lady Vivian. Whatever you think you see, it does not matter. He belongs to someone else." "Does he, though?" Sienna tilted her head, thoughtfully. "Because from where I am standing, that engagement looks like a political arrangement that neither party is particularly happy about. And the way he watches you when he thinks no one is looking, that is not political convenience. That is something a lot more dangerous." "Dangerous," Nora repeated. "Yes, that is exactly the right word for it. Everything about this situation is dangerous." She pulled her hand away from Sienna's and stood, moving to the window that overlooked the pack. "Grounds. I have spent my entire life trying to be invisible, trying to stay safe, trying not to attract attention. And now the most powerful wolf in the realm is telling me I matter, that I have some destiny I cannot escape, that I need to face something I buried 16 years ago because it is calling to him." Sienna was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "Maybe being safe is not the same thing as being alive, Nora. Maybe you have been so busy hiding that you forgot how to exist. And maybe, just maybe, this terrifying thing that is happening is actually an opportunity to become who you were always meant to be." Nora turned to face her friend, tears threatening to spill over. "And what if who I was meant to be is someone I do not want to be? What if the visions come back and they break me? What if the power in my blood is too much to control? Then you learn to control it," Sienna said simply. "And you let the people who care about you help you through it. You are not 8 years old anymore, Nora. You are not that scared little girl who had to bury something because she did not have the tools to understand it. You are strong. You are capable. And if the Alpha King is smart, which I assume he is since he runs an entire kingdom, then he sees that strength in you, even if you do not see it in yourself." The words settled over Nora like a blanket, warm and comforting, even as they challenged everything she believed about herself. "I am meeting him tonight," she said, "at midnight. We are going to the old house, to the garden. We are going to dig up the box." Sienna's eyes went wide. "The box? You mean the thing your grandmother made you bury? The thing you have never talked about in all the years I have known you?" Nora nodded. "He can hear it calling. He says it whispers my name. and I had a vision when I closed my eyes earlier. Just a flash. Just a moment. But it was real. It was the first vision I have had in 16 years, and it means the power is waking up whether I want it to or not. Then I guess tonight is the night you stop running, Sienna said. She stood and pulled Nora into a tight hug. For what it is worth, I think you are doing the right thing. Scary, yes. Dangerous, probably. But right. And I will be here when you get back, ready to hear all about it, and help you deal with whatever comes next. They held each other for a long moment, and Nora allowed herself to draw strength from her friend's certainty. Then Sienna pulled back, gave her one last encouraging smile, and left the library, leaving Nora alone with her thoughts and the ticking clock that seemed to be counting down the hours until midnight. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Nora tried to focus on her work, tried to lose herself in the familiar routine of cataloging and organizing, but her mind kept wandering to the garden, to the iron box buried beneath roses that had probably grown wild in the 5 years since her grandmother's death, to the amulet that supposedly held the key to a power she had spent most of her life denying. At dinner, she sat in the Omega dining hall with the other lower-ranked pack members, picking at her food and trying not to think about the fact that somewhere in the main house, Damon was sitting beside Vivian, probably being forced to smile and make pleasant conversation while the council discussed wedding plans and political alliances, trying not to think about the way his hands had felt on her face, the way his voice had dropped to something almost reverent when he said her name. She was in dangerous territory, and she knew it. Falling for the Alpha King was not just foolish. It was potentially catastrophic. But her heart did not seem to care about logic or consequences. Her heart only knew that when Damon looked at her, she felt seen in a way she had never felt seen before. At 11:30, Nora slipped out of her small room in the Omega quarters and made her way through the silent pack house toward the north gate. The moon was 3/4 full, bright enough to light her path, but not so bright that she felt exposed. She had changed into dark pants and a long-sleeved shirt, practical clothing for digging in a garden and facing whatever came next. Her heart pounded in her chest with every step, but she did not turn back. She had made her choice. Now she would see it through. Damon was already waiting when she arrived, leaning against the gatepost with his arms crossed over his chest. He had changed out of his formal attire into dark jeans and a black shirt that made him look less like a king and more like a warrior. When he saw her approaching, something in his expression softened. "You came," he said, and there was relief in his voice. "I was not entirely certain you would." "Neither was I," Nora admitted. "I almost turned back 3 times. But you were right. I cannot keep running from this. If the visions are returning, if the power is waking up, then I need to face it, before it consumes me." Damon pushed off from the gate and closed the distance between them, reaching out to take her hand. The contact sent electricity racing up her arm, and she saw from the way his eyes darkened that he felt it too. "Whatever we find tonight," he said, "whatever happens when you touch that amulet again, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Can you trust me to keep you safe even if everything else goes wrong?" Nora looked up at him, at this man who was supposed to be marrying someone else in a month, at this king who claimed to hear her name in whispers only he could perceive, and made a decision that terrified her. "Yes," she said. "I trust you." The walk to her grandmother's house took longer than Nora remembered. Perhaps because every step felt weighted with significance. Perhaps because she was acutely aware of Damon's presence beside her. His hand still wrapped around hers as if he feared she might disappear if he let go. They did not speak much during the journey, but the silence between them felt comfortable rather than awkward, filled with a sense of shared purpose that surprised her. When they finally reached the old cottage at the edge of the territory, Nora felt a wave of emotion crash over her. The house looked smaller than she remembered, more worn down, the paint peeling and the shutters hanging crooked. But the garden was exactly as she had pictured it in her nightmares. Overgrown and wild, roses tangling with honeysuckle and ivy, creating a maze of flowers and thorns that seemed almost deliberately designed to keep people out. "It is in the back," Nora said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Under the roses in the far corner. My grandmother said the roses would protect it, that their thorns would keep away anyone who should not be near it." Damon nodded and followed her around the side of the house, helping her push through the overgrown vegetation. The thorns caught at their clothes and scratched their skin, but they pressed on until they reached the corner she remembered. The roses here were enormous, their canes as thick as her wrist, their flowers still blooming even this late in the season, pale pink in the moonlight. "There," Nora said, pointing to a spot beneath the largest bush. "That is where I buried it." Damon released her hand and moved forward, kneeling beside the roses and beginning to clear away the undergrowth. Nora watched him work, her heart pounding harder with every handful of earth and tangled roots he removed. She should be helping, she knew, but her feet seemed rooted to the ground, her body refusing to move closer to the source of all her childhood fears. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. It took perhaps 20 minutes of digging before Damon's hand struck something solid. He looked back at her, his expression serious. "I found it. Are you ready for this?" No, Nora thought. No. She would never be. Ready. But she nodded anyway, and forced herself to move forward, to kneel beside him in the dirt, and look down at the iron box that had haunted her dreams for 16 years. It was smaller than she remembered, barely the size of a shoebox, but the metal was still intact, the lock still holding fast. Damon sat back on his heels and gestured for her to take the lead. "It should be you who opens it," he said. "This is your heritage, your power, your choice." Nora's hands shook as she reached for the box, lifting it out of the earth and setting it on the ground between them. The metal was cold against her palms, colder than it should have been, even accounting for being underground. She fumbled with the key she had brought, the one she had kept hidden in a drawer for all these years, and slipped it into the lock. It turned smoothly, as if it had been oiled yesterday rather than buried for over a decade. The lid opened with a soft creak, and there it was, the amulet, still gleaming silver. Despite the years, the moonstone in its center catching the light and throwing rainbow prisms across their faces. It was beautiful. It was terrible. It was everything she remembered, and more. The moment the moonlight touched the stone, the whispers began. Soft at first, then growing louder, a chorus of voices speaking in a language she did not consciously understand, but that her blood recognized. Her grandmother's voice rose above the others, clear and strong despite the fact that she had been dead for 5 years. "The time has come, little one. The time has come to claim what is yours." Nora's hand moved of its own accord, reaching for the amulet even as her mind screamed at her to stop, to close the box, to bury it again and run. But she could not seem to control her body anymore. Her fingers closed around the silver chain, lifted it from the box, and the moment the metal touched her skin, the world exploded into light. The visions hit her like a physical blow, so intense and overwhelming that she would have fallen if Damon had not been there to catch her. She saw wars spanning centuries, packs tearing each other apart over territory and pride and ancient grudges that no one even remembered the origins of. She saw the moon herself, weeping silver tears that fell to earth and became wolves, the first of their kind, blessed and cursed in equal measure. She saw a crown made of bones and moonlight, saw it placed on Damon's head while blood dripped from the brow where it rested. She saw herself standing beside him, no longer small or invisible, power radiating from her like light from a star. She saw children with her eyes and his smile, saw a future that could be if they were brave enough to fight for it. But she also saw darkness, a shadow moving through the packs, corrupting from within, turning wolves against each other with whispers and lies and carefully planted seeds of dissent. She saw Vivienne, but not as the vain socialite she pretended to be. She saw the truth beneath the beautiful mask, saw ancient magic and malice that predated the current era by generations. She saw the real threat, and it was already inside the walls, already whispering poison in the ears of those who thought they were making their own choices. Nora. Damon's voice cut through the visions like an anchor, pulling her back to her body, back to the garden, back to the present moment. Nora, stay with me. I know it is overwhelming. I know it is too much. But you need to stay with me. Focus on my voice. Focus on the feeling of my hands on your shoulders. Come back. She gasped, her eyes flying open, and found herself collapsed against Damon's chest. His arms wrapped around her while he murmured reassurances into her hair. The amulet was still clutched in her fist, still pulsing with power, but the worst of the vision storm had passed, leaving behind crystal-clear knowledge and a certainty that terrified her. She is not what she seems, Nora managed to say, her voice hoarse as if she had been screaming. Vivian. She is not just a spoiled noblewoman. She is something older, something dangerous. The darkness I saw in the visions, the corruption spreading through the packs, it is coming from her, or through her. I could not quite tell which. Damon's arms tightened around her, his entire body going rigid. Are you certain? Nora, this is not something you can be wrong about. If you are accusing her of being the source of the unrest, of deliberately sowing discord among the territories, I need to be absolutely certain before I act. I am certain, Nora said, and realized it was true. Whatever else the visions had been, whatever confusion and chaos they had brought, they had also brought clarity. She is using ancient magic, something that predates even the first wolves. She is not working alone either. There are others, a network of them throughout the territories, all of them whispering the right lies to the right people to ensure that the packs go to war, and the target, the ultimate goal, is you. They want you dead or discredited because you are the only one with the power to unite the territories and prevent the conflict they are trying to orchestrate. Damon was silent for a long moment. His jaw clenched so tight Nora could see the muscle jumping. How long? He finally asked. How long have they been working toward this? Generations, Nora whispered, the knowledge flowing through her like water from a spring. This is not a new plot. This is something that has been building for 100 years or more. They have been patient, careful, moving pieces into place slowly enough that no one noticed the pattern. And Vivian, or whatever is wearing Vivian's face, is the current manifestation of that patience. She was chosen specifically to become your mate, because that position would give her access to everything she needs to tear your kingdom apart from within. By the goddess, Damon breathed, and Nora heard. Real fear in his voice for the first time. If what you are saying is true, if she has already infiltrated the royal household, already positioned herself to become queen, then she is one ceremony away from having everything she needs to destroy us all. He pulled back slightly, enough to cup Nora's face and force her to meet his eyes. Can you stop her? Does the oracle gift give you the power to counter whatever magic she is using? Nora wanted to say yes, wanted to be brave and confident and certain. But the truth was more complicated. I do not know, she admitted. The visions show me what is and what could be, but they do not come with instructions. I can see the threat now that I know to look for it, and I can probably identify her accomplices once I know what signs to watch for. But actual magic, combat magic, that is not what oracles do. We are seers, not warriors. Then we find warriors, Damon said with fierce determination. We find people we can trust, people who are not compromised, and we build a defense against whatever she is planning. But first, we need to get you somewhere safe. If Vivian realizes that you have accessed the oracle gift, if she understands that you can see her for what she really is, she will try to eliminate you before you can expose her. As if his words had summoned something terrible, Nora felt a chill race down her spine. She looked up at the house, at the dark windows that suddenly seemed less empty than they should be, and saw a flicker of movement in the shadows. Damon, she said softly. We are not alone. He was on his feet in an instant, his body positioned between her and the house, a low growl rumbling in his chest. "Show yourself," he commanded, and the voice of the Alpha King rang with power that made the very air vibrate. "I know you are there. Come out where I can see you, or I will drag you out myself." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the back door of the cottage opened, and Lady Vivian stepped out, into the moonlight. Her perfect hair and perfect dress, somehow unmarred despite the late hour and the isolated location. But it was her eyes that made Nora's blood run cold. They were not the ice blue she remembered from earlier. They were black, solid black from edge to edge, and they reflected the moonlight like oil slicks. "How disappointing," Vivian said, and her voice had changed too, become layered with harmonics that did not belong to any living throat. "I had hoped to have a few more." Weeks before the Oracle awakened. "We have been monitoring the bloodline for generations, waiting for it to die out completely. And then you had to go and survive. And not just survive, but catch the attention of our dear Alpha King." She took a step forward, and Nora felt Damon's body coil like a spring preparing to strike. "Stay back," he snarled. "Whatever you are, whatever you have done with the real Vivian Ashcroft, you will not touch her." The thing wearing Vivian's face laughed, and the sound made Nora's skin crawl. The real Vivian? Oh, darling Damon. There has never been a real Vivian. This body was crafted for this purpose, grown from stolen genetics and forbidden rituals, given life for the sole purpose of infiltrating your household and destroying everything you love. She tilted her head, studying them both with those terrible black eyes. "But I admit, I did not anticipate this particular complication. A mate bond. How very inconvenient. All our careful planning, all our efforts to ensure you would have no true mate to strengthen your position, and then this little Omega appears with her oracle gift and her ancient bloodline, and suddenly everything is at risk. What do you want?" Nora found her voice, stepping up beside Damon despite his clear desire to keep her behind him. Why go to all this effort to start a war? What could possibly be worth generations of planning and all these deaths? Vivian's smile widened, showing too many teeth. "What do all conquered people want? Little Oracle. Freedom. Revenge. The restoration of what was stolen from us." She spread her arms wide, and the moonlight seemed to bend around her unnaturally. "Your precious wolves stole this world from us millennia ago. We who were here first, we who walked between realms and spoke with gods, we were pushed aside, diminished, nearly destroyed by the rise of the shapeshifters. But we did not die. We simply waited. We learned patience. We learned how to hide in plain sight, how to wear the faces of our enemies, how to turn their own strengths into weaknesses." Damon's growl intensified. "The Fae," he said, recognition dawning in his voice. "You are what remains of the old Fae, the ones from the legends. But those legends say your kind was banished, locked behind the veil after the Great War. How did you get through?" "The veil is not as impenetrable as your ancestors believed," Vivian purred. "Especially when you have centuries to find the cracks, to widen them slowly, to slip through one by one, and build your army in secret. We have been here for longer than you know, wearing the faces of your nobles, your advisors, your lovers. And now, finally, we have the pieces in place to reclaim what should have always been ours." She took another step forward, and Nora saw shadows begin to gather around her, coalescing into forms that hurt to look at directly. "The question is, what will you do about it, Alpha King? Will you try to fight me here, now, and risk the Oracle's life in the process? Or will you run back to your castle and try to warn your people, giving me time to complete the ritual that will tear open the veil completely and allow the rest of my kin to flood into this world?" It was a trap, Nora realized with sudden clarity. Either choice played into Vivian's hands. If they fought here, Nora could be hurt or killed in the crossfire, eliminating the only person who could identify the other Fae infiltrators. If they ran, Vivian would have time to complete whatever she had planned, and the war would become inevitable. But there was a third option, one that the oracle gift whispered to her in her grandmother's voice. The amulet, Nora said softly, looking down at the silver pendant still clutched in her hand. It is not just a focus for visions. It is a key to the old magic, the magic that predates both wolves and fae. My grandmother's grandmother was the last high priestess of the moon goddess, and this was her tool of office. If I can remember how to use it, I can close the cracks in the veil, seal them so thoroughly that nothing can pass through again for another 1,000 years. Vivian's confident expression flickered, just for a moment, and Nora knew she had found the weak point in the Fae's plan. You do not know how, Vivian said, but there was uncertainty in her voice now. You barely understand your own gift. You certainly cannot wield High Priestess magic without training, without years of study and preparation. You would burn yourself out trying and accomplish nothing but your own destruction. Maybe, Nora agreed. Or maybe the gift comes with its own instructions when the need is great enough. Maybe my blood remembers even if my mind does not. She closed her eyes and wrapped both hands around the amulet, feeling it pulse against her palms like a second heartbeat. There is only one way to find out. Nora, no, Damon said, his voice raw with fear. You do not know what that will do to you. The visions were overwhelming enough. Trying to channel actual magic through an untrained body could kill you. And letting her complete the ritual will kill thousands, Nora replied, opening her eyes to meet his gaze. I know you want to protect me. I know every instinct you have is screaming at you to get me away from danger. But this is what I was born for, Damon. This is why the bloodline survived when it should have died out. This is why the amulet called to you when you came here. Because we were meant to find each other. Because together we have a chance to stop this before it starts. She saw the war playing out across his face, the king's duty battling with the mate's need to keep her safe. Then something in his expression shifted, hardened into resolve. Together, he said. If you are going to do this, we do it together. I do not know how. I do not know if it is even possible. But if you need power to channel, then take mine. Use the mate bond. Use whatever connection we have built over these few days. I trust you, Nora. I trust you with my life, with my kingdom, with my heart. Tears stung Nora's eyes, but she blinked them back. There would be time for emotion later, if they survived. Right now, she needed to focus. She reached out with her free hand, and Damon took it immediately, his grip strong and steady and exactly what she needed. This is very touching, Vivian said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. But it changes nothing. You cannot stop what is already in motion, little oracle. The ritual is already 3/4 complete. By dawn tomorrow, the veil will fall, and your precious wolf kingdoms will burn. Then I guess we better work fast, Nora said, and pressed the amulet against her chest, right over her heart. The power that flooded through her was beyond anything she had experienced in the visions. This was not just seeing. This was being. She felt herself expand, felt her consciousness stretch beyond the boundaries of her body to encompass the garden, the territory, the entire network of ley lines and ancient magic that crisscrossed the wolflands like veins carrying blood. She felt Damon beside her, his presence a golden anchor that kept her from flying apart, his strength flowing into her through the bond they had forged. And she felt the veil itself, that ancient barrier between worlds that had been erected by the combined sacrifice of hundreds of wolves and other supernatural beings who had recognized the threat the Fae posed. It was damaged, just as Vivian had said, riddled with cracks and weak points that leaked power like wounds that had never properly healed. But the structure was still intact, the fundamental magic still holding. It just needed someone who could see the pattern, who could understand the original weaving well enough to repair it. Someone like an oracle descended from the high priestess who had helped create it in the first place. Nora's grandmother's voice rose in her mind, strong and clear and full of love. You were always meant for this, child. Every vision I ever helped you suppress, every power I taught you to fear, it was all preparation for this moment. The gift is not a burden. It is a responsibility. It is a choice to stand between the innocent and the darkness, to be the shield when no one else can be. And you are strong enough. You have always been strong enough. Now prove it. With a thought that was more feeling than words, Nora reached out to the damaged veil and began to weave. She pulled power from the amulet, from Damon, from the moon above and the earth below, from her own blood that remembered the ancient songs. She found the cracks and sealed them, found the weak points and reinforced them, found the places where fey magic had corrupted the original structure and burned it away with silver fire. Vivian screamed, a sound of rage and disbelief and pain that echoed across multiple dimensions. No, you cannot do this. We have worked for centuries. We have sacrificed everything. You are just one girl. One untrained, insignificant girl. She is not insignificant. Damon's voice cut through the chaos, ringing with absolute conviction. She is my mate. She is the Oracle. She is the strongest person I have ever met. And she is going to stop you. Nora felt the final crack seal, felt the veil strengthen and solidify into something that would hold for millennia to come. And with the last of the power flowing through her, she did one more thing. She reached through the veil to where Vivian's true essence was tethered and severed the connection. The thing wearing Vivian's face collapsed like a puppet with cut strings, the black fading from its eyes as the artificial construct lost the power sustaining it. Within seconds, there was nothing left but empty clothes and a faint smell of ozone, as if a storm had passed through. Nora fell to her knees, the amulet dropping from nerveless fingers, every ounce of energy drained from her body. But Damon was there, catching her before she could hit the ground, cradling her against his chest as if she were the most precious thing in the world. You did it, he murmured into her hair, his voice thick with emotion. By the goddess, Nora, you actually did it. You saved us all. Is it over? Nora managed to ask, her voice barely a whisper. Did we stop them? The veil is sealed, Damon confirmed. I could feel it happen, feel the barrier strengthen. Whatever army the Fae had waiting on the other side, they will not be crossing over anytime soon. And without their anchor point in this world, without Vivian to coordinate their infiltrators, their whole plan falls apart. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, then her cheeks, then finally her lips, gentle and reverent and full of promise. You were magnificent. You were everything I knew you could be and more. And I am never letting you out of my sight again. Nora wanted to laugh, wanted to cry, wanted to do something other than just lie there exhausted in his arms. But her body had other ideas, and she felt consciousness starting to slip away, her exhausted mind demanding rest after the incredible expenditure of power. Sleep, Damon said softly, seeming to sense her struggle. You have earned it. I will carry you home, and when you wake up, we will figure out what comes next. But for now, just rest. You are safe. We are safe. Everything else can wait. Nora let her eyes drift. Closed, trusting him completely. Trusting the bond between them that felt as real and solid as anything she had ever known. Her last conscious thought was that she had spent 16 years trying to be invisible, trying to be safe, trying to avoid the destiny that had been calling her name. And in the end, embracing that destiny had led her to the one person in the world who saw her, truly saw her, and loved what he found. The next few days passed in a blur of activity and revelation. Nora woke in the Alpha King's personal quarters, which caused a scandal that Damon completely ignored, and spent her recovery time learning to control the oracle gift that no longer frightened her. With the amulet as a focus, and Damon as an anchor, she found she could access the visions at will, rather than being overwhelmed by them, could sift through the information they provided and extract what was useful without losing herself in the process. Together, they identified 17 other Fae infiltrators, scattered throughout the territories, nobles and advisors who had been slowly poisoning the relationships between packs for years. One by one, they were exposed and neutralized, their connections to the Fae severed by the newly strengthened veil. The threat of war evaporated almost overnight, as the wolves who had been most vocal about conflict found their anger cooling, their certainty wavering, as if waking from a particularly vivid dream. The political fallout from the dissolution of Daemon's engagement to the false Vivienne was surprisingly minimal. Most of the council seemed more relieved than upset that they would not be allying with what turned out to be an ancient enemy wearing a beautiful mask. And when Daemon announced that he had found his true mate, that the Oracle bloodline had been rediscovered and that Nora Ashwood would be his queen, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Apparently, having a ruler who could literally see the future and its consequences was considered a significant upgrade from one chosen merely for political convenience. Sienna cried when Nora told her everything that had happened, then immediately started planning what she insisted would be the most epic royal wedding in werewolf history. Nora tried to protest that simple would be fine, that she did not need all the pomp and ceremony, but her friend was having none of it. "You spent your whole life being invisible," Sienna said firmly. "Now you get to be celebrated. Deal with it." The formal claiming ceremony took place on the next full moon, under skies so clear it seemed the goddess herself was watching. Nora stood in the sacred circle wearing a gown of silver and white, the amulet resting against her collarbone where it would stay for the rest of her life, and pledged herself to the Alpha King, who had heard her name in whispers and refused to let her hide. When Daemon bit into the junction of her neck and shoulder, marking her as his mate for all the world to see, Nora felt the bond between them solidify into something unbreakable, felt her wolf finally emerge from the shadows, where it had been hiding, and press itself against his in perfect unity. And when she bit him in return, claiming him just as thoroughly as he had claimed her, she heard the goddess's voice clear as a bell in her mind, full of approval and joy. "Well done, daughter. Well done." The reception lasted well into the night, with wolves from every territory in the kingdom coming to pay their auds, respects to the new queen, and to celebrate the end of a threat they had not even known they faced. Nora accepted their congratulations with grace that surprised her. No longer the shy Omega who had hidden in libraries, but not quite ready to be comfortable with all this attention either. She was still learning who she was now, who she was meant to become, but she no longer feared the process. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, and the celebration showed no signs of slowing, Daemon pulled her aside onto a balcony that overlooked the pack grounds, giving them a moment of relative privacy. "Are you all right?" he asked, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I know this is a lot to process. A week ago, you were cataloging books and trying to stay invisible. Now you are queen of an entire kingdom and the only oracle anyone has seen in a century." Nora leaned into his touch, marveling at how natural it felt, how right. "I am terrified," she admitted. "I have no idea how to be a queen. I have no idea how to use this gift properly, or what responsibilities come with it. But I am also happier than I have ever been, because I am not facing any of it alone. Because you see me, Daemon. The real me. Not just the power, or the bloodline, or the destiny. You see the girl who was scared, and tried to hide and buried her potential in an iron box. And you love her anyway. I love her especially," Daemon corrected. "The girl who was brave enough to face her fears when it mattered. The woman who stood between an ancient enemy and everyone she could have just let die while she ran. The mate who trusted me enough to let me anchor her while she saved the world." He kissed her slowly, thoroughly, with a possessiveness that made her knees weak. "You are mine, Nora Ashwood. My mate, my queen, my oracle, my everything. And I am yours, for as long as the moon shines and beyond." If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming? Nora smiled against his lips, feeling the bond between them thrumming with contentment and desire, and a love that had bloomed impossibly fast, but felt like it had been waiting her entire life to emerge. "Forever sounds like a good start," she murmured. "But I think I'm going to need at least that long to get used to being visible. Then I will spend forever helping you adjust," Damon promised. "And every day, I will remind you that you are always worth seeing, even when you thought you needed to hide. The world is better with you in it, Nora. My world is better with you in it. Never doubt that." They stood together under the full moon, the Alpha King and his Oracle Queen, while behind them the celebration continued, and ahead of them, a future stretched out full of possibility and promise. Nora had spent most of her life running from a destiny she feared would consume her. Instead, she had found that embracing it had led her home. Not to a place, but to a person. To a bond that transcended politics and prophecy and ancient magic. To a love that saw her at her weakest and most powerful, and valued both equally. The amulet pulsed warm against her chest, and in the back of her mind, she heard her grandmother's voice one last time, full of pride and peace. "You chose well, little one, and you will be magnificent." Nora closed her eyes and sent a silent thank you to the woman who had protected her, who had known even then that hiding was only ever meant to be temporary, that the gift would call when the time was right, that destiny could be delayed, but never truly denied. Then she opened her eyes and looked up at Damon, at this impossible man who had heard her name whispered on the wind and crossed territories to find her, and knew with absolute certainty that every moment of fear, every year of hiding, every sacrifice along the way had been worth it to arrive at this moment. She was seen. She was loved. She was exactly where she was meant to be.